Summoned to Soar, the 5 stages of the rise of a woman. Chapters 1 through 3. Chapter 1. Rise up and snap back. Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. Song of Solomon 2:10. There's just something about a woman who is committed to rise. A woman who is on the rise is resilient. If you're resilient, you've come through some stuff. You've experienced life. Deep down inside, a resilient woman knows that her setbacks prepare her for her comeback. If you are resilient, you know who you are. You are strong. You have tenacity. You have a natural buoyancy that gives you the ability to snap back. Something in your gut tells you that where you are in your journey is not your final destination. You are compelled to overcome obstacles and break through barriers which try to limit you to a life of ordinary. A woman on the rise is intentional. If you are intentional, you are deliberate and focused, committed to the full process of development in order to step into your call. A tug of war between your destiny and your day-to-day grind will always entice you to succumb to the disruption of the pointless obligations. But you are a woman on the rise, intentional about your focus and the direction that you move in. A woman on the rise is spirit-led. If you are spirit-led, you do not lean on your own understanding in your decision-making process. You are a kingdom-minded woman with eternal values and priorities. You are perceptive, guided by your intuition, and you have learned how to trust yourself. You are not daunted by what you see when you exhibit faith for the unseen. As a spirit-led woman, you do not always follow conventional wisdom. You are not influenced by the approval or the dissatisfaction of others. A woman on the rise is a spirit-led woman who is committed to a vision that encompasses a vastness that extends far beyond her own individual life. A woman on the rise is empowered. As a woman on the rise, you know that you're empowered for the job. You're not afraid of your personal power. You have a revelation that of your personal power that does not detract from the power of God. Rather, it is an outward expression of the power of God that resides inside of you. As an empowered woman, you use your power to influence your past, your present, and your future. You influence your own thoughts, patterns, and behaviors so that the influence you have over your own life begins to exude out of you and impact those within your sphere of influence. As a woman on the rise, you are empowered from within. In the pages of this book, you will be inspired to be resilient, intentional, spirit-led, and to live empowered as you rise up, step into your calling, and make the impact that you were placed on this earth to make. There are 5 phases that every woman has an opportunity to walk through. One phase builds upon the next phase, and each one preparing you to step into your highest calling, your divine purpose. There is nothing more fulfilling than knowing who you are, why you're here, and what you're here to do. But it is too easy to get stuck in one stage or the other and never progressing to the final stage, the rise. The first stage begins with a conventional life, the ordinary. In the middle of the ordinary, life is normal. Faith for the mundane prods you along as you go through the motions of day-to-day living. You learn, you grow, taking in life as it comes along. Fairy tales speak to you of the seeds of greatness within you and whisper to the princess within. Seeds of a dream of a queenly impact are deposited within your heart, but this stage mimics the life of a slow-moving caterpillar. Somewhere in the middle of the ordinary, a setback occurs, many times in the form of a crisis. The setback thrusts you into the second stage, which I call the cave. The cave is often a dark, lonely time of life that can either be the death of you internally or a place where transformation takes place. The cave is where you decide to relinquish control, let patience have her perfect work in you so that transformation can take place. The cave mimics the cocoon where the caterpillar goes through the process of metamorphosis and turns into a beautiful butterfly. In the cave, the third stage begins to unfold into the becoming. The becoming is the metamorphosis that takes place inside of the cocoon. The metamorphosis is the transformation that a woman goes through as she lets go of the woman who was fashioned by fears, failures, and insecurities and self-imposed limitations. In this stage, it is in this stage that she begins to awaken to her authenticity and come into alignment with her divine assignment. Once the transformation has occurred, the fourth phase begins, the debut. This is a season of breakthrough. Just as the butterfly, once fully formed, breaks out of the cocoon, a woman in the debut stage of life has stepped into the most authentic version of whom she was created to be. She knows her mission, vision, and purpose, and she is ready to be seen and heard. This newly fashioned woman is ready to use her wings to fly higher and further than ever before. All four of the stages culminate in the fifth and final stage, which I call the rise. The rise is where you begin to live a life of influence and impact, the influence and impact that you've been prepared to make all along. Each stage of advancement follows the same pattern of development as that of the transformation of the caterpillar into the butterfly. From the heroes of faith to the champions of old, these same 5 stages can be seen in the lives of anyone who has ever been a world changer or a history maker. Transitioning in and out of each stage requires being comfortable with the unknown and not being afraid of risk. Learning to transition with grace and ease will allow you to surrender to the process of development that is summoning you to soar to the heights that you were born to dance in. It is when you get stuck in one stage or the other that suffering occurs. When I say suffering, I mean fear, frustration, self-sabotage, overwhelm, underwhelm, and exhaustion. Each stage comes with a set of tests and trials that are necessary for graduation. Only when you become dissatisfied in the ordinary will you submit to the cave. To the degree that you embrace your time in the cave will directly affect how much you will become. Your ability to yield to the process of becoming affects your ability to step into the debut. Finally, you can only rise to the degree that you have surrendered to the season of the debut. The graduation of each stage directly impacts your ability to rise. Going through the full process of all of the stages is of utmost importance in order for you to advance to the rise. The rise is the ultimate destination of every woman, and it is God's desire for her. There is no need to ask if the rise is God's will for your life. His heart is for you to step into your queenly anointing that he predestined for you. It is his will for you to step into the call that he placed inside of you from before the foundations. He sees you in your completed state, and he is calling you to rise up. He is calling you to step into your calling so that you can assist him in establishing his kingdom and creating heaven on earth when life doesn't turn out as expected. We must be willing to let go of the life that we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Joseph Campbell. If life has not gone as you expected, then you are perfectly positioned to rise. As a little girl, you dream of the perfect life. You carefully construct the life of your dreams in your imagination, but something along the way happens. You realize your Prince Charming is merely a frog. Your castle is more like a grass hut. Your precious angel children morph into unrecognizable beings. Sickness and disease may rob you of a life of normal. Your money may get up and walk away as if it had legs. You end up in a job that feels more like a prison, or you fail at something that you just knew you had the ability to succeed in. You lost loved ones along the way that you thought would always be by your side, or you suffered betrayal, loss, and devastation. And then you have a setback. A setback is any obstacle that impedes you from moving forward. A setback can leave you feeling disenchanted and delusioned. A setback brings you to a fork in the road and is often accompanied by a lack of clarity, survival mechanisms, or disappointment. Disappointment can be a natural response to any kind of setback, whether big or small. But if disappointment is not addressed, then it will turn into underwhelm, a deep disappointment and regret about the way things should have been. In order to cope with the disappointments and the disenchantments of life, you thrust yourself into what I call the deadly D cycle, also known as underwhelm. The cycle starts with a deep sense of disappointment about the way things were supposed to turn out. Then, in order to survive, you push all those feelings down with denial. You have so many plates spinning in the air that it's easier to deny your own sense of disappointment and forge ahead with distractions. You keep yourself distracted by doing instead of just being. The problem is that when you lay your head on the pillow at night, all you're left with is your thoughts, and you feel like a diminished version of yourself. You feel drained and depleted because you give and give and give while neglecting yourself, which leads to you back to the beginning of the cycle of feeling a deeper sense of disappointment. The root of disappointment lies within our expectations. It is all about expectations. An expectation is an assumption or presumption. An expectation is not reality. It is nothing more than a theory or a hypothesis. It is a result of a fairy tale about the way things should have been that has been concocted in our mind. But what if life not going as planned was all a part of the plan? Underwhelm, a deep sense of disappointment about the way things turned out, is directly related to the expectations that we have established about life and people that we do life with. The problem with expectations is that they become a heavy burden to bear. When you presume them on your relationships, you may be the only one with the expectation, so it sets the other person up for failure. Your expectations are too heavy of a load to put on yourself or someone else to carry, and they may not be equipped to live up to your expectations. Dropping expectations about the way life was supposed to turn out will bring a whole new level of peace of mind, and it will open up space for you in your mind for creativity to be able to construct a life that you love. Take the pressure off of yourself and others and enjoy the life that you have right in front of you. Throughout this book, I'm going to give you the tools that you need to lay down a heavy burden of expectations and stop underwhelm from eating your lunch, stealing your joy, and keeping you from a life of purpose. You can break the cycle. It is doable. You can rise up and live a life of significance, fulfillment, and true joy, even if your circumstances don't change. Let me say that again. Even if your circumstances don't change, your setbacks have set you up for a comeback, and I'm going to show you how. Lessons from the rubber band. Setbacks show up in your life to give you an opportunity to snap back. Expectations and disappointment can stretch you to a breaking point. Have you ever felt like a rubber band that is being stretched way beyond its capacity to stretch? Women on the rise know how to be resilient and snap back from a setback. Mother Teresa said, I know God won't give me anything I can't handle. I just wish he didn't trust me so much. I can relate to this statement way too much. I've endured things that I never dreamed I would have to experience. And in the middle of those times of crisis, I felt like a rubber band that was literally about to snap. In those moments, I wondered, how can I keep it all together? How can I stretch any further? How can I keep going without snapping? Resilience is the ability to snap back after compression or being stretched beyond your normal capacity. The art of resilience is not for surviving, but for thriving. Resilience is not enduring. Resilience is what happens after you've endured. It is the flourishing that begins to happen after you've undergone the push and the pull of being extended past your limitations. Resilience has to do with expansion of your capacity. Capacity is the innate potential for growth, personal development, and accomplishment. Capacity is increased by expansion, and expansion is impossible without stretching. To stretch is to extend, spread out, or to lengthen. Being stretched requires elasticity. Elasticity is a response to change. You will never know how resilient you are until your elasticity is challenged and you are stretched beyond your capability. Your response to change reveals your capacity. The greater your capacity, the more resilient you are. Resilience is absolutely necessary in order for you to come back for your comeback to take place. Resilience is the difference between staying stuck and disappointment and moving forward. It is not what happens to you that causes your suffering. It is your response to what has happened. Resilience is your new response. Many of my clients are able to tap into their resilience after doing the work that comes with coaching. One such client suffered severe postpartum depression that left her feeling stuck in guilt and shame. After several sessions, she began to respond to the emotional triggers that had kept her in a cycle of spinning her wheels rather than reacting to her feelings of negativity. She responded with resilience, and she now works with women who suffer with the same symptoms. She allowed her circumstances to stretch her and enlarge her capacity for greater impact. Rubber band takeaways. There are 3 takeaways from a rubber band that you can incorporate into your life to inspire resilience. First, rubber bands are made of polymers. Polymers are chains of molecules which are cross-linked to provide a network. The cross-links determine the properties of the rubber band. In other words, who you're connected to really does make a difference. Cross-links provide memory. Connect with people who remind you that you can stretch farther than you think you can. Be intentional as you rely on your network to help you stretch further. Number 1, weekend baptism. Who you hang out with matters. Down at the lake, out on the dock, I stood there looking into the murky lake water, shaking with fear, trying not to hyperventilate as I was about to get ready for what I was about to get ready to do. With my network of encouragers by my side, one friend was in the water, treading patiently, and another friend was holding my hand. The girls waited for me to take the plunge that I have been avoiding for many years. A few months before, in a group coaching session, my dear friend and life coach, Elizabeth, had asked us a question, and she asked, "What is your deepest fear?" I had been fearless throughout my life when it comes to making bold moves, but there was no hesitation with my pen when it hit the paper, in full disclosure of what my biggest fear was. As we went into the group one by one, sharing our deepest fears, I listened as the others seemed to be so much more meaningful than mine. Before I knew it, my turn was at hand, and I sheepishly eked out, "I'm afraid of deep water." I could almost hear the giggles. Elizabeth inquired about this fear. "What about it are you afraid of?" she said. The words came spilling out of my mouth before I could catch them. I answered boldly, "Because I'm afraid of what is under there that I can't see." She smiled and lovingly said, "I wonder if that is a metaphor for your life." Ugh, those words went straight through me like an arrow hitting the bullseye. Yes, it had indeed been a metaphor for my life. At that moment, I realized that there were things that I had been avoiding because I was afraid of what was lying underneath in the dark, murky waters of my soul. I was afraid of what I couldn't see. Since I couldn't see it, maybe if I ignored it, I would go away. But ignoring those issues was not serving anyone. I went home that night and made a list of all those little nagging conversations that I had been avoiding and all the activities that I had been sidestepping for the fear that there was more to the story or more underneath the surface, and all the people that I was dodging for fear of confrontation would stir up trouble. At the end of our weekend, I made a bold proclamation for the next time I was around lake water that I would jump right in. Once I got home with fearless abandon, I began taking action, jumping into the lake, so to speak, crossing things off my list, and feeling the freedom that came with conquering my fears. But there was still one more thing that needed to be done, actually jumping in the lake. A few months later, the girls and I gathered for a reunion that took place at, you guessed it, a house on the lake. Wow, how convenient for me. Knees knocking, hands shaking, and heart pounding out of my chest. Yes, this was my day. As we assembled one by one, we ran around the room, catching up since the last time we had been together. And of course, they all remembered that I had professed my freedom from the fear of deep water and that I had committed to jumping in the lake. In preparation for my plunge, we talked about my fear and how it related to my life as a whole. One of the girls related my jumping into the lake to a baptism. At that moment, something jumped inside of me. Suddenly, I had a new revelation of what jumping in the lake meant and what it would mean to me. My network was causing me to stretch further than I could go on my own. With everyone's assistance, I started making a list of all the things that I would leave in the lake: unfounded fears, self-limiting beliefs, mindsets that were keeping me stuck. Then I made a list of what I was coming out of the lake with: fearlessness, freedom, focus, listening to feedback that life was giving me rather than creating a fantasy. So before the day had ended, I found myself standing on the edge of the dock, right where my story began. 1, 2, 3, plunge. I did it. I jumped in the lake. I jumped into the dark, murky waters, and nothing came up from below and dragged me under. I jumped into the crisp, cool water, and it refreshed me. The water caressed my skin and comforted me. And all that time I had spent being afraid of the deep, I had been missing out on a blessing. Somewhere along the line, I developed a gripping fear of water, or any water that I could not see through. But as it relates to being a metaphor for my life, I was choosing not to jump into the parts of my life that I feared more was lurking beneath the surface. Yes, you may have to investigate what lies beneath when you go into the cocoon. Yes, you might have to stir up the dark, murky waters of your soul and come face to face with the things that you've been avoiding. But when you do, nothing will reach you and drag you under. What I learned is if you rely on your network, you can stretch further and dive deeper. And that was my weekend baptism. Number 2, the art of the snapback. Your response is the key to resilience. Second, becoming more pliable. with your ability to snap back instead of snap is key. The thermodynamics of a rubber band's elasticity causes it to react differently than most materials when heat is applied. Heat makes a rubber band brittle and breakable. Flexibility, or giving up the need for control of the outcome, will give you the ability to snap back instead of snap when life turns up the heat. I remember reading the following story as a young woman. A young woman went to her mother and told her about her life and how things were hard for her. She did not know how she was going to make it through, and she wanted to give up. She was tired of fighting and struggling. It seemed as one problem was solved, another one arose. But her mother took her into the kitchen. She filled 3 pots with water and placed each on a high fire. Soon the pots came to boiling. In the first pot, her mother placed carrots. In the second pot, her mother placed eggs. And in the last pot, her mother placed ground coffee beans. She let them sit and boil without saying a word. In about 20 minutes, her mother turned off the burners. She fished out the carrots and placed them in a bowl. Then she pulled out the eggs and placed them in a bowl. She then ladled the coffee and placed it in a bowl. Turning to her daughter, she asked, "Tell me, what do you see?" "Carrots, eggs, and coffee," she replied. Her mother brought her closer and asked her to feel the carrots. She did and noted that they were soft. The mother then asked the daughter to take an egg and to break it. After pulling off the shell, she observed a hard-boiled egg. Finally, the mother asked the daughter to sip the coffee. The daughter smiled as she tasted the rich aroma. And the daughter asked, "What does this mean, mother?" Her mother explained that each of these objects faced the same adversity, boiling water. Each reacted differently. The carrot went in strong, hard, and relenting. However, being subject to the boiling water, it softened and became weak. The egg became fragile. Its thin outer shell had protected its liquid interior, but after sitting through the boiling water, its insides became hardened. And the ground coffee beans were unique, however. After they were in the boiling water, they had changed the water. "Which are you?" she asked her daughter. "When adversity knocks on your door, how will you respond? Are you a carrot, egg, or a coffee bean? Are you a carrot that seems strong, but with pain and adversity, you become soft and lose your strength? Are you an egg that starts with a malleable heart, but changes with the heat? Or does your shell look the same on the inside? Or does your shell look the same, but on the inside, you're bitter and tough with a stiff spirit and a hardened heart? Or are you the coffee bean, actually changing the hot water, the very circumstance that brought you pain? When the water gets hot, it releases the fragrance and flavor from within. If you're like the bean, when things are at their worst, you get better. You change the circumstances around you. Act like a rubber band and allow the heat of life to bring out flexibility so that your fragrance and flavor can be released for greater impact. Number 3, stretch. Third, the rubber band was created to stretch. When life stretches you to the point that you feel like you're about to break, it is not because you've done something wrong. Life is not against you. God allows the stretching because he created you with the capacity to make a greater impact. When the networks of the molecules inside of the rubber band are stretched, entropic forces take over. Entropy is the tendency for all matter to evolve toward a state of uniformity. There will always be forces at work trying to get you to snap back from the stretching, only to get you back to the way things were. The stretching brings you out of your comfort zone and snaps you back to a place that reminds you of your original authentic design, that for which you were created to be. You were created to be stretched. Getting comfortable with the uncomfortable will keep entropic forces from coaxing you back into a state of uniformity. You were created for a homogeneous life. You were not created for a homogeneous life of barely getting by. In December of 1920, Amelia Earhart paid to go on her first plane ride. While it only lasted 10 minutes, it changed her life forever. Few women were ever involved in the aviation field at that time. While her gutsy determination is attributed for her success, it is also believed that it was her confidence, which she described as her willingness to go after her impossible and her belief in herself that she could accomplish it, is what got the job done. Amelia Earhart chose not to conform to previously set standards. Instead, she located her impossible and she went after it. A rubber band can be stretched twice its size and still return to its original shape. You were designed to expand past your natural state. The point is that you can handle more than you think you can. You are resilient. I am putting a clarion call to women who are ready to lay aside disappointment and to be resilient as you snap back and come back, so that you can come back after a setback and rise up. Chapter 2, The Power of Transformation. The essence of transformation stirs hope through the pain, faith from the mundane, and leaves you with a gut feeling that none of it is in vain. Transformation is an integral part of the journey of a woman who is being summoned to soar. What is transformation? Webster's dictionary says to transform is to change markedly the appearance or the form of. It is to change in composition or structure. Transformation is a mindset shift that causes a change in your thoughts, patterns, and behaviors. Transformation shifts you from what you do to who you are. The act of transforming is to redefine, redesign, refashion, revise, revamp, to adjust or alter. It is to go through a metamorphosis. Just as the metamorphosis is the process by which a caterpillar transforms into a butterfly, transformation is the metamorphosis that a woman goes through that awakens her to her divine, authentic design, bringing her into alignment with her divine assignment and authorizes her for a life of impact. There are two types of metamorphosis that take place in the insect kingdom. The first is called incomplete metamorphosis. This is where the young look like the adults, but without wings. For example, baby grasshoppers, crickets, and dragonflies bear resemblance to their adult counterpart, but without having their wings developed. The second type of metamorphosis is called complete metamorphosis. In this occurrence, the young look nothing like the adults. They don't eat the same food, they don't have the same mode of transportation, and they are completely different. In this case of the butterfly, it goes through a complete transformation, a complete change in structure and composition. In the case of a woman on her journey toward the rise, her expedition leads her to a complete metamorphosis in which her life has transfigured from one way of being to another, a true complete transformation. Romans 12:2 says, "Do not conform to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will." The process of renewing of your mind results in a true transformation that takes place between your ears. in your mind, your thoughts, your patterns, your beliefs. Transformation begins in your thoughts, which affects your patterns and behaviors, causing your outer world to shift and align with your inner world. Your thinking changes, your circumstances change. The essence of transformation. The essence of transformation stirs hope through the pain, faith for the mundane, and leaves you with a gut feeling that none of it is in vain. The essence of a thing is the fundamental ingredient that sets it apart. The essence of transformation is that it is a key component at the heart of change that determines the outcome of a setback. At the heart of transformation is an essence. It's a feeling of hope that comes from knowing from the depth of your being that no matter where you presently are or what you're going through or what you've been through in your past, that there's purpose for it. And it is bringing out the best in you. A woman on her journey to the rise may have experienced a setback or two, but she possesses the essence of transformation. The essence of transformation is what will make you resilient and strong. It prepares you for your comeback. At some point, you've got to cross over into your 41st year. At some point, you've got to cross over into your 41st year. It's the time to cross over into your promised land. I was fired up and preaching good, and the amens were strong that day. I was preaching at our church in Austin. I was 40 years old and co-pastoring alongside my husband at the time. I was preaching about how the children of Israel wandered for 40 years in the desert before they crossed over to the promised land. I had heard many good sermons about wandering in the desert for 40 years, but I had never heard anyone preach about the 41st year. It occurred to me one day that at the end of their 40th year of wandering, the children of Israel exited the desert, and that was the end of their 40th year. They were entering into their promised land, going into their 41st year. Now, I was at the cusp of turning 41, and I knew that I was headed straight for my promised land. Looking back, I'm not exactly sure what I was expecting my promised land to look like, but somehow I knew things would be different once I crossed over. I always loved cooking, and I was raised to be a foodie, even when being a foodie wasn't cool. Something was stirring inside of me. I had raised my 4 kids. Raising my kids had been a full-time job. All the kids were in school, and I was ready to venture out and do something for myself, something I was passionate about. One day, I journeyed out and visited a few of the local cooking schools. When I entered through the doors of the Cordon Bleu Texas Culinary Academy, it was as if I was walking through the pearly gates. I could hear the angels singing as I crossed the threshold. I had just entered foodie heaven. My heart was pounding with excitement as I walked down the hall, and I saw all the students and the instructors dressed in their chef coats and chef hats. The sweet and savory aromas that filled the air triggered my saliva glands as if I was Pavlov's dog, and my mouth watered uncontrollably. I found my tribe. I had found my people. I was home. Sat down with the registrar, and I knew that this was something I wanted to do. But this was the first time that I would be doing something for myself. So many questions were flooding my mind. Can I handle raising my family and going to school? Was I strong enough? Was I smart enough? It would require sacrifice from my whole family. Would they be willing to sacrifice for me? Would they resent me for doing something for myself? Finally, I quieted my mind and I started asking questions that really matter. As I inquired about the starting date, what I heard next blew my mind. The registrar responded, "The next class begins on August 19th. That was my 41st birthday. Just like the children of Israel had wandered for 40 years and crossed over into their promised land, On the first day of their 41st year, I was done wandering and I was ready to cross over into my promised land of purpose on the 41st year of my life. Little did I know that crossing into my promised land became the birthplace of my transformation. That season marked an awakening inside of me that changed me forever. I had been wandering for 40 years, questioning who I was and what I was here to do. But on the first day of my 41st year, it catapulted me into a transformative process that rocked me at my core. Life was about to throw me a curveball that I had not seen coming, but I had the essence of transformation, and I trusted this to be true. Romans 8:28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and who are called according to his purpose. Chapter 3: The Power of Transition. When shifts and transitions in life shake you at your core, see that as a sign of greatness that's about to occur. Chelsea Deneen. A transition is a passageway that ushers an individual from one stage of development into another, from one season into the next. Transition creates an ebb and flow between your stages of development. It is absolutely necessary to understand the evolutionary principles of transition so that you can flow from one stage to another with grace and ease. Transitioning between the stages of the rise of a woman will keep you from getting stuck and spinning your wheels, and it will move you forward faster. As a woman, transition is something that your body does instinctively. You naturally shift from childhood to adolescence to womanhood and finally to menopause. In childbirth, your body transitions from labor to the opening of your womb so that you can deliver your baby. Muscles contract and relax to expand the birthing canal, preparing your body for transition. The transition that reveals what once was hidden in the womb to the life that you now embrace in your arms. Your body runs its natural course intuitively without spoken direction. However, your mind does not always cooperate with life's transitions as spontaneously as your body does. As a mother of 4, I am well acquainted with transition. I remember the transition of going from labor to pushing. With my firstborn, I laid on my back all the way through labor, so my body was not working in conjunction with gravity, which made the whole process take longer. When they put me on the table to wheel me down the hall into the delivery room, I remember looking up at the doctor and saying, "I don't want to do this anymore. I changed my mind." But there was no turning back. By the time I had my 4th child, I was no longer a novice at giving birth. I positioned myself in a way that my body would work with natural elements of gravity, and my delivery time was cut down to a third of the time. I remember when my daughter went into the hospital to have her first baby. Everything was going great. She actually was ahead of schedule, and her body was responding exactly as it was supposed to. As the nurse did a routine check, she was shocked to find that my daughter was already dilated and ready to push. They scurried everyone out of the delivery room and called for the doctor. We took our seats in the waiting room, and every time someone walked through the door, we nearly jumped out of our seats, ready to make a mad dash to the delivery room to meet our sweet little granddaughter. As we waited, the seconds turned to minutes, and the minutes turned to hours. Why is it taking so long? We thought to ourselves. They should have called us into the room to meet our granddaughter by now. We could not take the suspense any longer. We snuck down the hall, tiptoed into the delivery room, and pressed our ears against the door to try and hear what was going on. As we stood outside the door, we could hear the doctor telling Ashley to push. One of the nurses stepped out of the room and tackled her for her to give us more information. We bombarded her with questions. What's going on? Is everything okay? Why is it taking so long? How much longer will it be? But she was stuck in transition. I remember feeling an overwhelming rush of discouragement wash over me. I wanted to run in and shove the doctor out of the way and take over the situation. I felt helpless. I felt anxious. One minute, thoughts of fear and dread were racing through my mind. The next minute, I was hopeful and full of faith. Then the fear would raise its ugly head again, and all I could do was pray and wait. The worst part of transition is feeling a lack of control. Even if everything seems to be lining up perfectly, that does not guarantee the how or the when the outcome will take place. I remember living in Chicago most of my life, and the transition between seasons were always unpredictable. I would leave my house in the morning, all bundled up in my fall fashion, only to unlayer throughout the day and return to my summertime attire. You could turn the heat on in the morning and the air conditioner on in the afternoon. The calendar said the season was fall, but the atmosphere said it's still summer. There's no amount of control that you can exert over the weather. The weather does what the weather wants to do, but eventually the weather lines up with the calendar. Have you ever been stuck in transition, stuck in between seasons? Have you ever been waiting with anticipation of the cool, refreshing winds of your next season, but the sun is still bearing down? If it is still hot out, then the season has not changed, no matter what the calendar says. You can quote T.D. Jakes, get ready, get ready, get ready, get ready, and sing, he's an on-time God, until you're blue in the face. But the next season will show up at exactly the right time and exactly the right way. I know what it feels like to carry a vision. I know what it feels like to carry a vision as if I was carrying a baby in my womb. I know what it's like to carry a dream in my heart for what seems like 9 months long and to be ready to transition and give birth to the vision now. I know what it feels like to have carried the next stage of my destiny around to full term, nurtured it, cared for it, protected it from the naysayers, and even from my own negative thoughts. I know what it's like to have expanded in so many ways that I don't even know if it's possible, what it feels like I should be holding the things in my arm right now and experiencing the joy that is going to accompany the next level. But it is still in the birthing canal, stuck in transition. I know what it feels to push and push and push to birth the next level out now because you're ready now. But sometimes your next level is so immense that it needs to be birthed at the perfect time with the right support system around you when you are properly positioned. If you misappropriate where you are in the process of transition, then there's a danger of judging the matter and making counteractive decisions that will keep you stuck in transition. Wandering and wondering. Take, for example, the children of Israel in the Bible. They were given an opportunity to exit the place that had held them captive for generations. They had escaped from an oppressive season of the cave, but they griped and complained, wanting to go back to their previous stage of development to which they had grown accustomed to, slavery. They had an opportunity to enter the promised land, but rather than transition with grace and ease, they misappropriated their season of transition and they stayed stuck, wandering and wondering for way longer than they needed to. 40 years longer. They were only a few days away from the promised land the whole time. Life is cyclical by nature. You do not get a hall pass to exit one stage of development until you are fully equipped and ready to step into your next stage of development, abundantly prepared. In other words, you will get a chance to go around that mountain again. Allowing transition to accomplish its purpose in you will make the journey easier and more enjoyable and more effective. Transition will show up differently throughout the stages of development. Searching for more may beckon you to transition from one stage to another. A setback in the form of a crisis may coerce you out of one stage and into the next. Self-examination may guide you from where you are to where you want to be. A struggle has the ability to shift you in and out of stages, but no matter how transition reveals itself, surrender to the process of change. Go through the full evolution that is beckoning you to a higher place. To transition is to make a changeover, a shift, or go through an evolution. Transition, however, happens backwards, so it can leave you with a feeling insecure and unstable if you're not keenly aware of what's happening. Transition happens in 3 stages. Let's take a look at the 3 stages of transition: an ending, a neutral zone, and a new beginning. Transition begins with an ending. When one stage of development comes to an end and you stand at the doorway of your new season, you have to be ready to step out of the old and into the new. Transition lays the framework for the crossover from one season to the next. You may notice an abrupt ending, such as losing a job or relationship that suddenly changes. If you do not understand transition, you may see these happenings as life is falling apart, or God must be mad at me. What am I doing wrong? However, if you are aware that you are in transition, you can confidently exit one phase of development and enter to your new season with grace and ease. Emotions are often associated with the beginning. Emotions that are often associated with the beginning of a transition are fear, shock, blame, guilt. The strategic action is to simply let go of the transition, let transition do her thing. Growing up as a preacher's kid, my dad would always end his sermons with a story. One such was about a little boy. He climbed up onto the counter while his mom was preoccupied with the laundry. He plunged his hand into the cookie jar, but the cookie jar filled. He plunged his hand into the cookie jar, but he had filled his hands with so many cookies that he could not pull his hand out of the cookie jar. His mother came in and caught him red-handed before he could get any cookies out of the cookie jar. The moral of the story is that sometimes you just have to let go of something so that you can enjoy the sweetness that's available to you. If he had let go of the handful of cookies and just taken one at a time, he could have pulled his hand out and eaten the cookie. If abrupt endings are showing up in your life, don't freak out. Let go of the last season so that you can enjoy the sweetness of the new season that's right around the corner. Consider the fact that you may have stepped into the beginning stages of transition. The neutral zone. The neutral zone finds you smack dab in the middle of transition. Once the previous season has ended and you are heading into the next season, you will find yourself in the neutral zone, which feels like the abyss of the unknown. Take a deep breath. You will not be here forever. You will know you're in the neutral zone when one thing has ended, but the new thing has not arrived yet. The neutral zone can feel like the most frustrating part of transition. Emotions associated with the neutral zone are anxiety, uncertainty, and even confusion. But you know in your knower that you've graduated from one stage of development, but you know that you've not stepped into your new season yet. You can name it and claim it, blab it and grab it, but your next season is like the wind. It cannot be captured or ordered around. Like the changing seasons of the weather, the calendar may be saying spring, but spring ain't sprung until the flowers bloom. If you feel like you're in no man's land of the seasons, then you're probably right on target. You're in your neutral zone of transition. And guess what that means? Your new beginning is right around the corner. Transition ends with a new beginning. New beginnings can be so exciting. They can be filled with wonder and awe. However, new beginnings can also bring up insecurities. You've never been here before. So, along with the excitement, you feel frustration of learning new ways and being in your new season so that it can show up. Do not become so enamored with the new beginnings that you get stuck there. Integrate all the lessons from your previous season into your next one. Reinvent yourself along the way as you incorporate your new mindsets. Be creative in your new stage of development so that you can squeeze every ounce of personal growth and development and learning out of this new stage. Turn time. I was born in good old Louisville, Kentucky. When Kentucky Derby time rolls around, truth be told, I'm more interested in gawking at the big hats, but I discovered something so profound about a horse race. A horse race is divided into 3 fractions. The first and the third fractions are not the best indicators as to the horse's ability to win the race. The determining factor is in the second fraction, the transition toward the head for home, or better known as turn time. Races are won or lost in turn time. The reason that turn time is so important is that it is difficult for a horse to maintain its velocity and path while negotiating a turn. Many horses give up at the point of turn time. Anxiety sets in when they hear the stomping hooves come up behind them, or they have a hard time transitioning from leading with their right foot to their left foot. Horses are not natural born leaders, so if they're not properly trained, they may shrink back to their natural instincts and second guess their ability to step out in front as the forerunner. But if handled right, turn time can set a horse up for the big win. I am convinced that the key to crossing the finish line of your next level is won or lost in turn time. The keys lie within your ability to negotiate your transition with precision. Shut out the noise of what's behind you and be fearless in your ability to take the lead in your own life. Your next level will not be determined by how you started or even how you end, but it's how you handle transition, your head for home. It's important to remember that by the time the horse is heading for home and turning the corner at turn time, the horse has already been around the same curve so many times. But this go around is different. The same curve that he has rounded before, the same time is at the same curve he has rounded before. This time is the last time that he will make this turn because it is his head for home. You may have been around this corner before. You may feel like you've been stuck in the same old cycle before, but I want to declare over you that this time is different. This is your turn time. This is your head for home. If you feel like you've been trapped in this first fraction for way too long, you can turn the corner again, and this time you can head for the finish line. The way you transition makes all the difference. It's easy to look around at something that is ending and not recognize that it's actually the new beginning of something new. Your ability to get to the new beginning is dependent on your turn time, the middle ground, your head for home, not getting stuck in the transitional periods of your life. Transition is an evolution that can keep you stuck in the same place if it's not combined with forward movement. Turn time is impacted by stamina, focus, and sometimes bold counterintuitive actions. Just like the horse changes from leading with his right foot to his left foot. The skills needed through turn time successfully are honed by repetitive training. This preparation time is essential, and I believe that everything you've been through up until this point has been the groundwork that you've needed to set yourself up for success as you enter turn time, hit your stride for home, and head for home for the big win of achieving your next level. Lessons from Lamaze. When it comes to transitioning, I'm reminded of 3 key Lamaze practices to birth a baby in the natural, which gives us clues as to how to handle transition. The first Lamaze healthy birth practice is to let labor begin on its own. When a woman's body is transitioning during labor, the more she relaxes and lets go, the easier the birthing process will be. Contractions are just her body's way of moving, shifting, and expanding to give the baby passageway from inside of her to outside of her. When we are birthing our next level of purpose and destiny, the more we let go and surrender to the process, the easier it will be. Transition is often a more subtle adjustment than a leap. The second Lamaze healthy birth practice is to walk, move around, change positions throughout labor. The word transition means a modification or a shift. To transition from one season to the next, from one phase of your destiny to the next, it involves a shift. Maybe there's a shift if you're thinking in your thinking, or even a shift in locations that needs to take place. The shift puts a demand on your physical endurance, your mental capability, and your emotional tenacity, and your spiritual stamina. The shift expands your limitations, but the shift makes room for more. The third Lamaze healthy birth practice is to bring a loved one or friend for continuous support. Friendships provide key protection, provision, and partnership. Your connection is key. The people that you are connected to are the key influencers in your life because they are the ones that will provide the support system as you transition. Be on the lookout for key connections during this season of transition and be willing to make some bold moves, even when they're out of your comfort zone. Philippians 1:6 says, "There has never been the slightest doubt in my mind that God, who started this great work, will keep it at it and bring it to a flourishing finish on the day of Christ Jesus appears." The Message. Eventually, my daughter did give birth to my sweet granddaughter. She is more than I could have ever asked for. She is so amazing that I do not have words to describe how much joy she brings to all of us. If you are in transition, move, shift, connect. It will all happen in its time. You will make it through transition, and you will give birth to the next stage of your development. God started it, and He will keep at it and bring it to a flourishing finish. Practice the art of transitioning with grace and ease. It will make the journey more enjoyable.